Good afternoon, everyone. Alan Gilbert Andrews, Specialist Leader at Deloitte Consulting, specialize in technologies and open source projects.
Yeah, my name is Matthew Miller. I'm a chief architect at Red Hat. I'm in our field CTO organization. As my focus is our ecosystem partners. So one of the things that I wanted to kind of talk to today is about something that was talked about heavily within this conference is that the Forbes article came out and said that 95% of AI projects fail. And I know that for a lot of people out there, this looks like it's one of those things that could cause a lot of companies to shy away. But how many people here have actually ice skated before? it's definitely like one of those things that it matters to have practice. So where people go through and kind of forget is that looking at what they're doing day to day within their modern DevOps life cycles actually is the perfect balancing act to get ROI. And teams are focused on innovating faster, deploying more frequently, having to maintain higher security standards and higher quality. Tool chains are getting unbelievably complex, and developers have to know these with very high sophistication, and knowledge is often really siloed and proprietary, and time for troubleshooting is finite, but the amount of logs are just ever growing. So you can see that like just within this use case, there's real potential for generative AI to provide larger ROI. And the way that it can do it is by first reducing the learning curve. How many people can go through and read an entire implementation guide when you can go through and get quick summaries? You actually have the capability to get step-by-step guidance now. And really like going through and saying, I need to deploy it this way. And generative AI can provide you the step-by-step methodology to go about doing it and even diagram it out for you. Going through and doing troubleshooting, being able to do multi-dimensional troubleshooting where I can be looking across not just the logs that are happening within one subsystem, but the entirety of my environment to understand what can cause an outage. It's not just the mechanics of complex monitoring tools today. This is like going through and actually be able to look for that needle within the haystack and utilizing those to be able to go through and say, I actually reduce the downtime. And really, it empowers user potential. People coming out of college right now within software development, there's this concept that it's a dead field. And really, it's only an ever-growing field because it is the next generation of software development. Like we're all going to be intelligent AI developers at some period of time. So you're going to be able to boost productivity. And what I would say is, you can kind of jump to the next slide. Every COTS provider that's out there currently today is going to be going through and offering the capability to be implementing generative AI as part of their traditional system sets to be able to go through and do troubleshooting, and as part of their technologies to be able to go through and deliver how they can bring their services faster and easier to you. And while we're doing this today by interfaces, we're going to see this as agentic systems soon so that you're actually able to go through and tie in the generative AI across many series of COTS to be able to get broader landscapes. So what I wanted to go through and do now is show some real use cases from Deloitte and what they're doing within their healthcare interactive part, which is modernizing Medicare, Medicaid systems, to be able to say, this is where real ROI can be found, and I'd like to pass it over to Alan.
Thanks, Matt. So, okay. So, as of now, considering how many developers and system administrators that we have, every day a developer has to go between 5 to 10 systems to manage everything, right? Like, I have to I use an ID, I want to understand the user requirement through user stories. I go to Jira or Snow, I pull up the database. There are so many tools that everybody has to look into it. Let's go to the system administrators. On an average, they have about 7 to 10 they do. Like they have to constantly look into the ticketing system for any new tickets coming in. They have to work with the developers, the testers to understand the environment is right or wrong, or things are working fine or not. Plus, they also have to monitor the system, right? Like on a day-to-day basis to make sure the system is running. All these, imagine, right? having a digital agent with you to help you with uh, consolidating all these products into it, right? So this there is a reference architecture we put it here. If you follow through it, we have made it natural language based system. So as a system administrator, I join a system and I want to do a troubleshooting of a issue which is going on, right? I just joined today. I have no idea of what's happening. What I do, I go log into the web portal. I have a small chat bot which is coming in. I will show it in the demo in a few minutes. I can ask for what the issue is going on right now. I can check on the health of the system. I can check on which services are failing, which systems are having issues, database is running slow, my queries are not performing the way I want, all through natural language, right? Like you just chat on it, even with voice, you will be able to get the information, right? And I want to know uh, how many tickets have been assigned to me in the last 15 minutes or 30 minutes or like last hour, how many sub ones I have, all that within the chatbot. I've got integrated with the Snow, so I'll be able to pull the information out. So if you see in this reference architecture which we have built, there is a web portal, there's a chatbot which has multiple number of agents, right? App agents which talks to any APIs. You want to talk to a ForgeRock system or an Okta system or a Keycloak, or you even want to talk to the customers APIs, you will be able to do it through that agent, right? There is a ticketing agent. It connects to Jira's and Snows and other Zendesk and other products, which can get you real time information. Plus, also you can also send open up a ticket saying like, hey, I found a bug. Um, I want to have raise a ticket to the functional team for them to look into the requirement. I can do it just with the chatbot. I mean, I don't have to go log into Snow and say, hey, this is assign it to Matt. He's going to be looking at it. All that is done through chat, right? Then there is a few models which we have built, right? When we do chat, I want to know a little bit of where the data is, right? Some analytics which we have to do. Hey, I've been running 1,000 transactions, and suddenly my um, transactions per second has gone down to 10 transactions per second, right? There is a graphing mechanism. We can upload an Excel, and we'll be able to see graphs just in that chatbot itself. Data visualization, data analyst agent. There is a RAG feature also, right? Let's say we'll do it in a demo, but I also, let's say, right, we have 1,000 pages of document, right? Like they're sending it to you and say, hey, this is the design document, go through it as a functional analyst, create me all the user stories, epics, and features that needs to be implemented for this solution, right? What I'll do, we'll have to go through all the 1,000-page document and weed out whatever is not required. I'll find the summary of where my data is needed, and I'll create a user story for my developer and tester to go parse through it and write code and deploy it, right? All that is gone. So we'll upload a document, a 1,000-page document, and I'll say, hey, these are my impacts. My system doesn't leave Medicaid. And it'll parse through and say, these are the 7 places Medicaid has been impacted because of this policy change. And I'll ask it to say, hey, create a bunch of user stories for me. It'll create the user story. It'll give references to from where the user stories were created. Only thing which we have to do it as a manually is, as a business analyst, would be to verify everything is covered and put an RTM kind of approach, right? Like requirement traceability metrics. That's it. Similarly, for a system administrator, right? As Matt was saying, it's not one system which has my logs, right? I'll have logs in my database. I'll have in my API layer. I'll have it in my web layer, application layer. There are so many layers when I have to go pass through to identify where the system is failing, right? We'll cut it off with the chatbot. It'll say, hey, I have a problem in this service. This is not working as expected. And in this place is what is causing issues. And it'll even send a recommendation saying like, hey, go look into this line of code, or go look into this component which is having issues. Which means when it comes to the developer from a system administrator, he'll just have to look into it and say, hey, in this line of code, I missed something, and I'll go fix it, or I'll put a workaround for it, so that we can move forward with that, right? So that's the way we have built it. Just not building it. We have been using this for the last 8-9 months with the product. Deloitte has a product called Health Interactive. We have built the solution. It is running in like 5 states. Imagine the number of, I mean, we have about millions and millions of transaction, right? Just going in specifics, like 1.5 million per day is the transaction level which we use the system for, and it is run in like 5 different states. So just to troubleshoot it, there is an army of people who are spending time making sure the system is all up and running. So with this solution which we have built, it has scaled down the amount of effort which we do, right? Like, and it has enabled us to look into the right direction, fix it as quickly as possible, and also understand how the system is behaving within few seconds, right? Just few metrics on the value which the product has provided to us, right? Like from architecture, right? Few examples, right? Like your code quality is improved. We use GitHub Copilot. You can use Claude or other products also, but it has improved this code quality by 65%. That's one metrics. But just from an architecture standpoint, right? Like we have CIS benchmarks, we have NIST standards, right? And everybody, the security policies and the new, in, I mean, like well architected frameworks and other things are I mean, it's evolving. What I do, I mean, just a casual example is I have a design document, right? I have to review my developer's design document. He sends it to me. I say, hey, can I compare this with the NIST standard and what all gaps I have in it, right? If I had to do it manually, I have to go through his 40, 50 pages of document, and I also have to go back to the NIST standards and figure out, hey, which is missing, right? Imagine the time it would take. And all of that with GenAI, we have reduced it, and it has become super helpful. And within like 30 minutes, I'm able to give the feedback. He addresses it in another 30 minutes or half a day, and dev starts working. So that's the big advantage of it. It is helped in multiple layers. We have a DevOps, right? As a developer, again, I wrote my code. I want to do a deployment. Usually what happens, we would have kept a 4-hour pipeline, every 4-hour pipeline in dev environment and like on need basis in the UAT environments. But here, when I need a build and I want to test it out, I say, hey, can you run this build for me? I've changed this code, build it, right? It goes, runs the build pipelines, deploys it, and you have an image. You can test out the image saying like, hey, it's all working fine. Whatever changes I wanted to make is all there. And then I put it in the release branch. So it goes to production after the UITs and other things. Yeah. So we were able to make it possible, right? I mean, we use Argo CD for configuration management, which helps us in maintaining configurations, and randomly a developer cannot change settings as and when I want, right? Like, so we have put some controls in there, but it has enabled developers, testers, and whoever wants to do what activities can be done within the chat bot itself. That's the advantage. Little bit of more metrics. I'll not go into the details. As I said, security, I want to do NIST standards, which I need to verify. I want to make sure that my FIPS standards are managed, right? All that can be done through just with the chat bot. We have had a great success with code development, right? I mean, using GitHub Copilot specifically, it enables you to have better code quality. It reduces your SAST and DAST and security vulnerabilities which you raise through the development lifecycle. So it's been very helpful for us from a end-to-end system standpoint. The last thing, or the use case or the problem which we have tried to solve in this, right? Imagine as a leader or a CIO, CTO, even the operations manager, right? You go and ask for statistics. Hey, how the system is behaving, right? What happens is the operations manager goes to the system administrator. System administrator goes and queries into 10 different systems, and he figures out, hey, there is a 5 services which are not working well, or there is a slowness in certain services, does health checks, validates, and then sends a report back, right? Usually, if it's a critical issue, it's a SEV1, the response is in within 1 to 2 hours, where there are 3 people who are working on it to get it done. But with the chatbot, what we have done is I can go and do and figure out, is the system working fine? Can you give me the health of the system? Can you give me the failure of the system, which I'll show it in the demo also, a quick demo which we have. It also has enabled us, as I was telling you, the root cause analysis, right? Uh, all systems goes through, parses through the right data. It gets the right information which is needed, and it helps you to understand this was the root cause of that issue, right? If a server one happens in a production system right now, how many days it takes for an RCA is like, we have an SLA with our client saying like it takes 5 days, right? Because we have to go through so much of information and say that this was the reason for it. But all that has been changed in the last 6 months just with the tool which you have built. And this is the first version of it. We are moving towards multiple iterations where we'll talk about it once I finish the demo. Do you want to add anything?
So just to kind of reiterate, going through and actually creating things like reports for the C-suite is actually like one of those parts where you can break down the entire adoption mechanic. So going through, working in my role, I'm looking at adoption life cycles. And it's not just like what's innovative and cool right now. It's like, how do I go through and handle the mechanics of systems that have lots of controls and lots of security? So let's talk about like what Alan has gone through and do. If you consider that AI is both velocity and proficiency, from a velocity perspective, adoption of frontier-based models; from a proficiency perspective, enhancing code-based components and allowing the implementation in areas that are regulated. So looking towards those mechanics of private cloud and sovereign AI. Adopting things like data summarization so that you can go through and look through all of the log pieces to be able to go through and understand what's specifically occurring. And then you're creating a stakeholder within the C-suite so that they actually become invested into the next generation of the product. And this is where I say that chasing some of the dreams and trying to avoid being disrupted really loses the, I would say, the real potential of where generative AI can start, because you have to solve these basic fundamentals before actually moving to the next step. People forget that some of the larger frontier models have been in existence for nearly a decade. So there's a head start for organizations that are just bringing up their practices right now, and they're going to have to go through some learning curves. And having the mechanic of doing this and actually creating the investment pieces where they're adopting each one of the phases really means that you can get through the security components, and then each group, from the systems administrators to the developers to the security teams, are all going through and involved in making it more successful. So I think demo time, right?
Yeah.
All right.
I'll go into the demo. I'll just walk through. Here, if you see, there's actually a quick representation, right? As I was telling, as a system administrator, you want to know the health of the system. I put it in to open up a chatbot. This is the web application, and it has given me responses saying like, hey, I'm live and ready to accept requests, right? Like, which we can do at any time. Where we are seeing here, it provides the key metrics which you need from the system standpoint itself. All of the successes, failures. It's a simple dashboard. If this report has to be created right now by a system administrator, it takes like a few hours to days to get the data, right? I mean, it is right now in your hand, and whenever you want to do, you can get that information, right? And even go into the details, right? I've provided, right? Let me go and get the, let me pause. Health of the provider service, right? If you see the provider service, there are 4 services which are needed in that, event specific to that. It is all healthy is what I'm saying. And it's also saying like 200, okay, right? Like HTTP 200, which is like a system is available. But what it helps is, how many of us know about HTTP, right? Like if we go to a C-suite and ask me, what is 200? They may not know much. So it also provides details on what, as a summary, says, hey, the 4 components which we had in the provider is currently operational, right? You don't have to worry about the 200s, but now you understand it's operational. That's what I want to know. It says overall, the summary is also provided, the reference is taking fine, all of that, right? When I go a little bit more, In the next example, I am able to do live health checks, right? Like live health checks is now what the system is doing. Let's say a call center is reporting an issue saying like, hey system, I'm not able to access the system, right? It quickly goes back and figures out system is all good, and I don't have to go into multiple levels to troubleshoot the issue or not, right? It maybe is their local machine, or their internet is not working, right? Similarly, what we've done is across the board, if you see this example, across the board, check all the systems, and it is provided there are two services which are not working as expected in this example. What it is doing, it is reprocessing a service which is a 403 error, and there is a address validation system is throwing a 500 error, right? Just not ends there. It says, hey, it's because of an access denied. Maybe a third party system is not working fine, that's why they are throwing an access denied error. uh, and there is a 503 which says there is no healthy upstream for me to send the data. So which actually figures out within few minutes, it figures out and it tells us where the system issue is, what needs to be looked at, and where I need to do. So immediately after I see it, I wouldn't go to the system administrator and ask him how to fix this. I'll go and ask the interface partner and say, hey, your system is not sending requests, it's sending access denied, can you go fix your problem, right? So all my system administration effort and teams which are working on is all gone, right? They don't have to worry about it. They can do something productive for the system itself. That's the big advantage we have been able to leverage in our operations, right? uh, as I go, right, it provides a lot of recommendations also. You go look into the service error in the common utilities. To that level is able to find out this. The next use case which we'll be talking about here, I posted, you integrate with IAM solutions like Oktas and ForgeRock and your Keycloak, right? What it does is it goes and checks, hey, does anybody send a request for user access, right? Again, the ROI is what we're talking about here. A user request, usually as soon as you finish all the trainings and everything and you send a request to the teams to approve it, it takes few days for them to put it in the queue and say, hey, I approve this, and then it goes into processing, saying like, okay, somebody else will pick up the Keycloak admin will take up the request and he'll provision the services, and provision the access, which is all done through chatbot itself, right? Here we don't have any request. If there is a request, I'll be able to approve it. It'll go in an alert and say, hey, administrator approved your request, and you will get an email for your reference future also, who approved it, when it was approved, and all of that. Meanwhile, the access provisioning service is also triggered, and by this time the user would have gotten access to it, right? Oh, sorry, I went back. Couple of things I want to talk about in the RAG model, right? I'll push a little bit out, and back here. This is the documentation, right? Like I uploaded a 1,000-page document, which is a one big beautiful bill, right? It's a 1,000-page document, and I want to understand what all my implications are based on this the bill, right? So I've asked a question: what is it going to be? Again, sorry. What is it going to be for my healthcare solution, right? It provided the summary of all which is written in that 1,000-page document, the policy document, and finally it's saying these are the places where your request has been mentioned. So what happens, I don't have to go look into the 1,000-page document, and I'll be able to go into the particular places where the changes are going to impact me, and I'll pick it up and I'll read through it maybe, or I'll ask the bot to create a user story for me. Done, right? So which usually takes your requirement gathering phase for a large project like this. It'll take like 3 months to 6 months just to find out what all systems getting impacted, what all user stories and epics and features which are needs to be built out. Takes like few months for us to figure it out. It's all fraction of in minutes, right? uh, as I was telling earlier, here as a developer, there's a request. I am asking. I'm not able to access to a portal. That's the request here. If you see the chat, uh, my email ID is so and so. So as soon as I say that, it triggers a snow call and says like, hey, oh, you don't able to access your system. Send me all these information, and I'll create access for you. Right? If I'm the administrator, it is immediately it gets approved, and your system access is available for you within few minutes. Right? So that is the big advantage. Similarly, when let's say I'm writing code as a developer, I'm writing a code and I need to understand about a ticket so that I'll be able to understand. I don't have to go log in back to Jira or Snow and figure out where my issues are, or like what are the tickets which I'm assigned. But it comes to your desktop or in the chat bot, and I ask more question about it. Give me the description. I don't have more information on the description. Understand what is the thing which needs to be implemented, and I get it implemented. So that is a big advantage of integrating this ticketing bot also. The last thing which I want to do outside of the demo is it doesn't end here. Let's say on a Saturday night, as a system administrator, there is an issue which is going on. Am I going to be available in the system to go and chat and say, hey, where is the system issues or anything like that? Which means I'm adding a person to be monitoring the system on a Saturday night, Sunday morning, weekdays at like midnight, right, to keep the system alive. That's not needed. So what we have done is we have built agent. I mean, we all know, we've all been hearing about the agentic AI and AI solutions. What it does, it understands your system patterns. Let's say I have a web service call which is going on regularly, and I'm starting to see 40 errors which is coming in. Usually there may be one or two, but today I'm seeing within the 30 minutes there is like 40 errors or 50 errors which is coming in. I don't need to go and ask a person to open up a ticket, let's get on a bridge, nothing like that. This agent will understand your pattern and will create a ticket for you. It'll check. There is a 7-1 ticket which needs to be addressed within like an hour or so, right? And I have a workflow to check 1 hour after the same ticket. Is anybody approved it or anybody is looking into it and there is no response to it? The agent itself will set up a Teams meeting or a Slack chat and say, hey, this issue has not been addressed. Can you look into it? Because your SLA of 1 hour is getting impacted, right? Immediately, it'll take care of it. No, even then, nobody's around. Let's say take another 2 hours down and the SLAs are getting impacted. What it does is, the agent which we have done, it can run and trigger scripts. So what it'll do is, if the service itself need to be restarted, it'll go trigger and say, hey, restarting the service. I've captured all the logs, all the metrics which is needed. Your services, like the script is triggered and your system is up and running, right? It'll again do an health check and say, hey, I'm good or not. That is the level of implementation which we have done. When Matt was saying there was about 95% of the projects which are using GenAI are like failures and not successful. We are moving into that 5-member category, and this has been super helpful for us in our day-to-day operations and also in our implementations.
So if you want to go through and really make projects like this successful, there's an old adage that the cobbler's children has no shoes. If you're not utilizing GenAI in your day-to-day, if you're not going through and walk through the mechanics of the steps and have your leadership actually looking at like seeing like how agentic can go through and deal with the mechanics of operations, how velocity-based frontier models can help with the mechanics of coding, how sovereign mechanics, and you're actually able to go through and utilize private models to be able to go through and harvest the power of internal data, then you're really kind of shooting at the moon, because there's a lot of lessons learned in between. So I think we have some time for some Q&A, right?
Sure. Any questions?
Wait, sorry. If yeah. Wait, let me.
So This kind of backward looking, it's kind of analytical, reactive. How about forward looking? For example, I want to roll over, this and this projects. I really want to know or predict how many tickets or help desk tickets or issues, are going to be raised because of this new platform.
Right.
I mean, it's for planning, like in the financial industry, but the same drill.
Very, very nice. I mean, that's a great idea, right? So there is a little bit of predictive model. We use something called KIDA from Red Hat. It's an open source project too, which actually helps understand our traffic patterns. Not the same example that you're saying, like how many tickets are going to come in and all that analytics, which we can do it in Snow or other places, right? Like in Jira, put some queries in and say, hey, in Mondays we get so many issues and all of that. But what we have done from an operation standpoint is we scale resources based on predictive models, right? I understand the patterns which are going on, right? With auto scaling and the scaling features which we have like OpenShift and all of that, Kubernetes basically, it tells us, hey, on a Monday morning, there are 1,000 users more. Usually there are like 50 users, but today there is 1,000 users. But Monday evening, it goes down to 50 again, right? Usually when in a cloud environment or in like AWS or Azure or Google, you spend a lot of money on your instances and the workloads and the compute which you are doing. All that is predicted now. So I am predicting my system features, and based on the events, I trigger my scaling parameters up and down. So that's one. The other is we also look into the log patterns and say, hey, if I start seeing these kind of errors in 40 minutes, my system is going to go down, or it's going to be my transactions are going to be impacted. So that kind of analytics, we do it from the analytics standpoint. And just one other metric, what we do is we generate correspondences of thousands and thousands and upon a time. We did a predictive model, ran through how the system is behaving, and finally we identified that every 14 days, once if you restart the correspondence generation product, it increases your correspondence generation by like 23% is what we have identified. So which means I have put an operational system saying every 2 weeks on a Monday morning, restart my server, right? It doesn't do anything. I mean, we don't have a control in the product which the product vendor has done, but we have identified these patterns to help us with operations. That's few examples of how predictive analytics have helped.
Yeah, and one of the things that not many of us actually get to go into greenfield environments and kind of start off new projects. It's the focus that to go through and bring trust to an organization, what AI can deliver, you need to sometimes start with what you're delivering today, and then bringing that forward will go through and provide you those capabilities to say, look what we did based on our own velocity that we've gotten out of this technology right now. It is now telling us that we should focus here. And that's a real important part, because the adoption mechanic of going through and bringing everybody, especially up to that C-level suite, to be able to say, I'm providing right now that based on what I'm seeing, you're going to have to require more hardware, or you're going to have to go through and scale. Well, if they've been utilizing it for 6 months and seeing, I'm understanding what the system's looking like and it's been really reliable, it's going to make that next acquisition much, much easier.
Hi. Is there a difference between the chatbots users use and the chatbot that administrators use?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, role-based access, right, which is very, very important. I don't want my business analyst to look into my logs and find out that there is some unnecessary information which is going on there. So this is all role-based control. So which agent or a tool, the MCP tools, who can use is defined by the role, right? If I'm an administrator, with the demo I saw, I was able to do everything, but my system administrator may not be able to do the RAG models, or he might not be able to upload the documents and start summarizing the documents. He'll not be able to do it. Same way, my business analyst will not be able to go and look into the logs or log agent and find out what is going on in the logs. So there is a role-based access which is established, so people know what they can do and what they cannot do. And a security administrator cannot jump into the database, or database administrator cannot come into security. All that are defined in role-based access, and that's how we do it.
So a follow-up question on that same idea. You mentioned compliance before. So if you have role-based access control, how are you doing that example of where you go through an entire compliance document and tell somebody about everything in your system that is or isn't compliant if they don't have access to everything in your system?
So that is, again, who can access that data? Just stepping a little bit back, right? There are only certain people, I mean, in part of the role-based access, only certain people can upload the document itself. There are junior business analysts, just for an example, they'll be able to see whatever documents which they are available to them, and they'll select these documents. I need to summarize it, hey, get me information about it or not, right? But let's say for a security administrator who is a security architect who's looking into NIST standards and all of that, they'll only be able to see the documents, maybe, right? Like they can look into the, they won't even have access to the databases and other things to say that this configuration is there or not. They won't have access. That's where role-based access comes into the picture, and they differentiate between who can do, at least in the chatbot level.
Sorry. So the question I was trying to ask is, if I don't have access to everything that I need to answer a compliance question like that, does it give you a pointer to say, oh, you need this kind of access to get the answer to that? Or does it give you an incomplete answer, because LLMs do that a lot, right?
So that's great question. First step, it'll say you don't have access to this tool, right? That's the first step. If the question is that complicated and there is no information is possible, as usual, the LLMs respond back saying like, hey, this is not possible, do this, or ask this person, or get in support email or something like that is what we have configured. So whatever is available is available. What is not available, we say like, hey, reach out to experts or contacts for that to move forward. Yeah. Yeah.
My question was, when you guys are making solutions for different companies, like what are some of the risks and mitigations that you guys face with certain like generative AI solutions? So for example, I know sometimes when you're speaking to an LLM, like you can have a lot of hallucinations, and I know that sometimes business decisions are driven by the C-suite or other employees. So I guess in your experience, what have you done to try to kind of mitigate those risks?
The main concern, as soon as you go talk to a C-suite and say, hey, we're planning to talk about GenAI, immediately the CISO or the security officer comes in and jumps in and say, hey, what is the security? Tell me, I don't want to release all my private information to public and train the LLMs back. So that's the huge question, right? Like I'm from the GPS practice. All the state and local and federal agencies are very, very concerned about what data, who has access, and how it is used, right? So the first thing, what we do here is we have a dedicated instance of whatever GenAI models and the instances that we are using to them. So which means that data is not going back to anybody else. That's the first and foremost. The second issue which commonly comes up is the hallucination part of it. You asked a question, this question was related to administration, but I'm getting an answer related to security, which is a huge risk, right? I mean, what information I am supposed to see, somebody else is able to see, is a concern. So how do we do that slice and dice of roles and accesses is another huge concern which we have already got. And that's what we're trying to solve too.
And one of the main parts is that the difference in generating the adoption model is where we're bringing in the new solution. So it's AI ops, it's developer productivity, it's going through and creating a better SLA experience. It's not forefront to the customer. so you're delivering it. It's not forefront to the customer. So the C-suite, the end customer, they're utilizing it to understand the system that they're using, and then in seeing how it's benefiting them at the system that they're using, it makes them imagine what it could be as they would provide it outwards to others. So going through and actually looking at it from, if we're going to go through and pitch the field of dreams, there's a whole lot of concern of like, what do I need to do? Because it's going through and tackling the white whale. But actually the focus on direct ROI, to be able to say, the troubleshooting time is going to go down, the uptime is going to go up, the coding productivity, as you saw, is going to go up 50+%. Those types of things actually save money, and those mechanics of saving money really are the pull and are technically the lower lifts. So even with the private data and utilizing your own model sets, it's happening within a constrained environment to a limited number of what we would consider to be trusted individuals that you're trusting within a boundary of the role-based access control.